What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. This is the show for Tuesday, February 27th. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer, joined by both CJ the Hitman Hickman and Jason Cabrera. What's up, guys?
What is up, buddy? How you doing?
Yeah, I am surprised. It's been a while since we got everybody on the show. It's exciting.
Excited,
How you guys doing? How you been?
I don't know, man. We've been chasing water flows to get to Jason, man.
It seems like it, right?
I've had some issues. But I'm back.
It's all good.
I apologize. I am
we
back.
It's all good. We understand life happens sometimes, but the show must go on, and it has. And it goes on today because we have an amazing show for you guys today. Today, we're going to be finalizing our installments of must-save shows, recapping the 2017 season. Today, we get to dive into the tight end positional breakdown. We'll be going through all of the tight end ones, numbers 1 through 12, what happened, how they got to where they are. And as we'll get to, if you look at the total numbers, just comparing to last year, really depressing. Remember when we said that 2016 was really kind of a down year for the tight end? 2017 was worse in a lot of ways. So we'll get to that.
Every year is a down year for the tight end.
It's trending in the wrong direction. There's enough stats to back it up. Yeah, it's not an anomaly anymore. We can safely say that. As always, please make sure you guys subscribe wherever you're listening. We are a year-round show, and make sure you guys submit your questions as well. We check all the sources regularly: Twitter, Facebook, emails. Get all over. If you want to support the show, especially head over to Patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Get yourself a bonus podcast every single week, and also we really appreciate if you can go on to whichever service you are subscribed to listen to the show. If you guys can give us a rating, give us a review, takes about 10 seconds for you, and it helps the show out a ton. So with that, let's move into our top headlines from around the league. There's not a lot to get to, but some important things did happen over the weekend. Some things happened as the show even posted last Friday. And we'll start in Jacksonville, where quarterback Blake Bortles has signed a 3-year deal worth $54 million, $26.5 million guaranteed, so he will be the quarterback for the next 3 years. Was this the smart move, guys?
This is a.
I know CJ's answer.
This is a prove it deal. I was very surprised and shocked when this went down. I thought they were going to be a team that was probably going to be in the running for Kirk Cousins, or even probably draft a high quarterback. I mean, it probably, I don't know, it probably not stopped them from doing it. But I mean, making this deal, it's kind of like, you must have liked what you saw for Blake Bortles in the playoffs. I mean, he did one game. I mean, that Steelers game was really good. I don't know how you can be impressed with that Bills game though. That one's a little confusing. But so you had a good game against the Steelers. You had a good half against the Patriots, and then now I guess you're paying him this money because you're believing that he can be able to take that next level. I mean, that's my thinking.
Jason?
You know what this is? This is Tom Coughlin. This is Tom Coughlin in action, because he's coming from a situation where he had Eli Manning, and Eli Manning everyone was down on Eli Manning, year after year, and he would push him year after year and tell him, you know what, I've got all this respect for you, and I believe in you, and so on and so forth, and it worked out pretty well for the Giants. So I think this is Tom Coughlin going, you know what, Blake Bortles has worked out pretty well for us. He's gotten us to the playoffs. He's played well. Yeah, there's been some down, but we can fix it. That's what I think is going on. And what are the options for them? Going and getting one of these guys in the draft. So they're drafting way too late for that. They can't get one of the top 4 guys. So they're going to have to try to do something on the open market. Blake Bortles played well. So is it a smart move? I don't know, but I think it's the safest move for them right now.
Well,
I feel like Tom Coughlin is like that old school gym teacher in your class, and then Blake Bortles finally gets his respect, and it's like he doesn't get like the congratulations or I'm proud of you. He just gets that look, and then just that thumbs up, and that Blake Bortles, you know what I'm saying? Blake Bortles finally like, yes, I've earned this respect.
Isn't it crazy how we take how well a team does and reflect that on even individual performances? Because Blake Bortles this season, we all thought, okay, he bounced back. He did a good job. I mean, the team rewarded him with a new contract here, but he actually threw for the least amount of touchdowns since his rookie year. He threw for the least amount of yardage since his rookie year. But, I mean, he was more efficient, less attempts, higher completion percentage, but not by a large margin. So it's really just a matter of the team played better around him. So, I mean, hey, he got the job done.
Whatever works. Whatever works. You want to win games in the NFL. And
absolutely.
And that's the bottom line.
Well, I mean, I'll just point out this. It is a 3-year deal, But, I mean, it's really, if you look at the numbers, more of a 2-year deal. And even then, I doubt they would move on after just this 1 year. Because, so this year, he's locked in. It's a $26.5 million cap hit. Like we said, that's the guaranteed money. Next year, he'll be owed $21 million if he plays, $16.5 million if he's cut. So they could save $5 million there if they find the answer. I don't see it happening. But the following year, he's owed $23 million, but only dead cap of $5 million. So they could really move on from him after 2 years and save a lot of money. So we'll see. It all depends on how he plays, how they build the team around him, how the team performs. Because this is a team that clearly believes that their window for winning a Super Bowl is open. I mean, they made the AFC Championship this year. So, upgrade a couple pieces around him. We have all basically heard that they're going to franchise tag their number one receiver, which basically didn't play this year. I mean, it's a couple upgrades. Maybe that's all the Jags need. I mean, their defense is mostly young and all under contract. I think
got a heck of a running back. I mean, they've got
heck of a running back.
Heck of a second receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a good team, and that defense is ridiculous.
Yeah, as we mentioned, out of their starters, there's only a few notable free agents. I mean, Allen Robinson, who they're going to franchise tag, Marquise Lee, which they're probably going to let go. We've heard they're probably going to cut Allen Hurns to try and save some cap space there. Paul Posnizny, who is I don't even know what the word I'm looking for. He's the centerpiece. Yeah, he's an institution in this defense. He's a free agent, but, I mean, he's getting towards the end of his career. He's getting really up there in age. And their left guard are free agents. Other than that, the entire rest of the team is under contract next year. So this team's going to look very similar to what they did last year with some upgrades, we assume, at wide receiver and probably a couple other things through the draft, through the free agency. Because the Jags, all this being said, they still have the 12th most cap space in the league. They have a lot of money to make some moves right now. So we'll see. But yeah, let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals. This is some interesting news. Arizona Sports' Mike Jurecki, that's right. He said that he does not expect the Arizona Cardinals to join the bidding war for unrestricted free agent quarterback Kirk Cousins. Now, Arizona's been very commonly linked as being one of the top 3 landing spots. Now, this is an interesting, different take. Jason, what are your thoughts here?
No, that's exactly what I've been saying the whole time. I mean, if you read my blog, then you saw the thing I put out about that, saying I don't see it happening. I don't see Arizona ponying up that much dough. Kirk Cousins is going to be extremely expensive. For him to come to Arizona, he would have to take a massive pay cut. And as much as he says he will take a pay cut to play for a winner, I don't see him taking that much of a pay cut. So, yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
At least here on the show, and of course having an Arizona native on the show really helps us get some up close and first person perspective with the team. We love the landing spot, but I think we all agreed that was probably out of the top landing spots, probably the longest shot. I mean, Minnesota, we're expecting to be quite the bidding war. Denver has said that they're willing to do a lot. I mean, we've heard about how the Jets are willing to do whatever it takes. Yeah. I mean, we've been hearing rumors, and I think we've mentioned this on previous shows, that they a lot of the stuff coming out of New York saying that they could offer him the first fully guaranteed contract in the NFL. So, I mean, there's a lot of things going on right now. So, because as we also already mentioned, franchise quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins never hit the open market. That just doesn't happen in this league. So it's going to be really, really interesting when free agency starts. So, we've linked a couple other players that we think are more likely to land in Arizona. I don't know. Did you talk on the show yet about which one you think is the most likely for them to pursue, Jason?
Well, I think that if they're going to pursue somebody in free agency, it's probably going to be Sam Bradford. He's the most accurate passer that's going to be available. He has the opportunity to be a franchise guy. Also, he's going to be really good to mentor somebody, and I'm hoping that they go out and get Josh Allen in the draft. And his main problem is accuracy. So if you go get Sam Bradford and then you bring in Josh Allen to mentor him and help him with his footwork and everything, that'd be a really nice little package to put together. The other thing I thought was a possibility for us would be trading for Nick Foles.
Right. Do you think that if they fail at grabbing any of these veteran quarterbacks, that maybe Larry Fitzgerald does decide to hang it up?
No. Once Larry says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. He says he's coming back regardless of anything else that happens. So I expect him to play another year at least. So that's basically. I don't. And here's the other thing: it's not really going to be reticent on who it is, as long as the guy that comes in has an opportunity to win. And I think that Steve Keim is going to make sure that happens.
We will see. Again, free agency is going to be really interesting, not too far away. Let's go to talk about another one of those free agent quarterbacks. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports that the Minnesota Vikings are not expected to place the franchise tag on Case Keenum. This has been very commonly speculated on being the case. Does not seem like it's going to actually happen. So another one of the top candidates seemingly guaranteed to hit the open market. It's going to be really fascinating once free agency starts. It's rare we see, like we said, one franchise quarterback out there, but just a number of viable starting quarterbacks on the free agent market, plus a very deep quarterback class in the draft. So I'm a lot of people, they talk about how they can't wait for football to start, but if you're a true football fan like us, I mean, the offseason is just as interesting. So we're going to get to that very shortly. Let's go to the running back position, heading back to Jacksonville, where they have released running back Chris Ivory. This is something we've speculated on for probably at least a month now. We all kind of thought this was going to happen in an attempt to clear up some more cap space. He was being owed a lot of money and getting almost no playing time. With Leonard Fournette there, they didn't even need him, so not surprised. Do you think Chris Ivory signs anywhere? Is anything more than a camp body, maybe a rotational piece?
I don't know. It got to depend on the situation and depending on the place. But yeah, I agree with you. Most likely, he's probably just be a vet, bring it in there, train some of the young guys, and then probably be let go. Week 3 of preseason.
Something like that, probably after the third preseason week, before all the major cuts. Well, no, remember, because last year they were able to keep everyone until after the fourth game, but a lot of teams were starting to cut early. Well, they don't have to anymore. Right. How they used to have to do like a certain amount of cuts, like every week to every other week. Speaking of starting running backs, in Washington, the Redskins running back Samaje Perine is expected to be the starter in 2018. I would say that's not super surprising. He was hopefully going to be the guy last year. Kind of never really seized the role. But, I mean, is this exciting for fantasy? Is this a guy worth drafting at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I know me personally. I know I like this guy a lot coming out of Oklahoma last year. So, I wanted to see what he can be able to do in the role. I told a lot of people he kind of reminds me of a young Maurice Jones-Drew. So I think he could have been that good guy and be that lead back for them in that offense. Just like you said, it didn't really come to fruition this past season, but I do expect big things out of him this upcoming season. I mean, they're kind of limited on weapons as it stands right now, what they got. So right. I know Alex Smith, he likes to get the running backs involved, and a good Alex Smith offense is tied in hand when it comes to the running back. So there you go. That's one good plus you got already if you want to get a part of this Washington offense.
But wouldn't you expect much more explosive Chris Thompson to be more of a third down back, getting a lot of those dumps off and pass catching role?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you wanna mimic what Kansas City was doing with Shaquille West, yeah, he was that third down guy. But Kareem Hunt, or even if you want to go back a little harder than that, Spencer Ware, he was your guy for the first two downs. So right. I mean, and he was very reliable in that offense, and he was the one that was annoying you getting the touches when you probably would have went out and got a Shaquille West or Jamal Charles coming off an injury, so one of those two guys. So it was pretty weird and just dumb out in Kansas City when the running back position. But I think when it comes down to Washington with Perine and Thompson, I think it's going to be a little more clear of who you can rely on. You might most likely people probably going to end up drafting both of them, to be honest.
I guess the $1 million question is, does Samaje Perine get all of the goal line touches? Rob Kelly's still under contract.
He's the bigger back. He should. And they really don't believe in Rob Kelly, Fat Rob, to be honest. I mean, they basically gave him the job for him to be able to lose, and it was just like week after week, slowly they started taking that role away from him. And of course, he got hurt, and then that basically kind of, straw that broke the camel's back when he got hurt. So, Samaje took over, and then, they started just bringing in other people. I mean, they were like you said, there was weeks and stretches where Chris Thompson was that guy. He was just dynamic in that offense, and then when he got hurt, they kind of stumbled, and it was hard for them to replace, a talent like him.
Incredibly explosive, hyper efficient. I mean, that workload for that amount of production is very hard to sustain, and that means Capri Bibbs also a sleeper in a lot of deeper leagues. A lot of people are big fans of his. Probably not going to see much playing time. And let's move on to something that we speculated openly on the show when this happened last week. Many more sources are now expecting that franchise-tagged Miami Dolphins wide receiver Jarvis Landry is going to be traded. And as soon as this happened, I know we talked here on the show that this reeks of Miami trying to get something out of Jarvis Landry, knowing that they weren't going to probably be able to sign him. They franchise tagged him, but we all said this is probably a ploy to be able to trade him, and it's looking like that's heating up everywhere. ESPN reporters Adam Schefter saying that, among many others, including those close to the team. So I mean, this is something that's incredibly frowned upon in the league. They're not supposed to do this, but there's no actual written any written rule that says that you can't. So I mean, do you think this is going to be something that bird law? Do you think this is going to be something that kind of picks up steam perhaps until the new CBA?
I think it is. I think that until someone tells teams you can't do that anymore, and they actually pass a rule saying you can't do it, that teams are going to take advantage of that little loophole. And it may be frowned upon, but the bottom line is you're trying to do what's best for your team. And if that's an option, and you got this guy Jarvis Landry who is a very good player, who's going to be a fantastic slot receiver somewhere for somebody. You're going to go ahead and do that. I don't necessarily condone it, but I understand the thought process behind it.
It's incredibly messed up because, this guy is supposed to hit the free agency. He's supposed to be able to have his choice to go wherever he wants at this point. He's in control of his own career, and the team's taking that away from him by franchise tagging him. So, it's definitely a moral gray area, and I'm going to be intrigued to see the fallout of this in the coming years until the new CBA is worked on a couple years down the line. Let's see. Last bit of news. I mean, we could speculate on Jarvis Landry's landing spots, but bottom line, it no longer really matters because we were arguing where's a good fit, but now it's kind of outside of his control. It's going to be whoever pennies up the most, we assume. And last bit of other news. This broke, I believe, wasn't this on Friday after the show posted? We talked about this a little bit on Twitter. The Kansas City Chiefs are expected to trade cornerback Marcus Peters to the Los Angeles Rams. To my understanding, this is yet to be official, but it's all but done. Everything I've heard. The compensation is yet to really be known, but you have to assume that it's probably future picks as well as maybe a decently high amount this year because they won out in a bidding war because by many reports the Cleveland Browns, the San Francisco 49ers were on the bidding war, and both those teams have a lot more. I mean, the Browns in draft picks alone have an astronomical amount they could give up this season, so I'm intrigued to see what the compensation was back to the Chiefs. What are you guys' thoughts on this?
I'm less than thrilled.
Yeah, I was like, go ahead. I know you're less than thrilled, Jason, because he's in your division.
Yeah,
but
that's absolutely right. This guy is lights out, dude. This dude's a monster, and I was kind of hoping Arizona might make a play for him. I knew we weren't going to get him. He was going to cost too much money, but he's now in our division on a very stout already defense. So I am definitely less than thrilled, but it's going to be. I mean, I get to watch him play, but against my team.
All right, so I've kind of thought that they did finalize it. I mean, it's all but done until the actual day they can be able to do it. But the compensation for the Chiefs is they get a 4th round pick of this year's draft and then a second and next year. Yeah, so they get the 4th this year and the 2nd next year. And to be honest, for the Rams, I mean, a lot of people at the end of the day are like, well, who won the trade? To my mind, I think the Rams won the trade because Kansas City and I think both teams won, but I think the Rams, they capitalized on, Marcus Peters being a young lockdown defender that is in a better situation with the Rams versus Kansas City, because Kansas City, I mean, look, we've seen it for weeks, man. They just don't have any other help outside of Peters there when it comes to that secondary. It felt like, to me, just me outside looking in and just watching the tape, as soon as Eric Berry went down that first game, the whole defense dropped. Right. I mean, and it's just like the secondary was horrendous. They were just giving up points at will, and they couldn't do nothing to stop it. That's why I kind of feel like that's probably why Alex Smith had that best year, because he knew he couldn't have no other choice but to score because his defense is not stopping anybody. So these cornerbacks, it just wasn't going to help. And then for Peters, and he has a young talent. You look at his numbers from rookie year going into seasons after that. You can start putting the defender in bad positions where he has to cover guys for more than 5 to 6 seconds. Of course, he's going to give up some yards, and he started giving up more yards than he ever had in his career in this past season with Kansas City. So I think it's going to be better a fit for him going to the Rams. Wade Phillips, it's when you look at his track record with cornerbacks, it's very cornerback friendly because quarterback's going to get the ball out just because the pressure that's coming up there, and you got Aaron Donald. Of course, I feel like they're going to get better. You probably get another good year out of Robert Quinn, bounce back year. So adding him, and you got Trevane Johnson on the other side. I think this is great for the Rams. And in Kansas City, you get a headache that you couldn't really control out of your building, and you can be able to replace that in better talent. But Kansas City, their secondary still taking the L because they really don't have any other corners there. But I really like this pick for the Rams and for them building.
I guess the question is Kansas City officially kind of entering a rebuilding period? Because, they've been giving away a lot of their top prospects in the last couple off seasons. They shipped out their starting quarterback, and now they're shipping out arguably their best defensive player at the moment. It's this team. Obviously, we think that they're obviously competitive. Here they are being a very good team the last couple of years. But, if they keep shipping away all this stuff, something's got to give. And a lot of people are speculating that maybe they're closer to rebuilding than they are to a Super Bowl.
I think they've been. I think when you actually look at it, I think the domino effect, that train of thought happened as soon as they traded Alex Smith. They wanted to go younger. They invested a lot in Patrick Mahomes. They want to see what they got. I think offensively they're going to be all right. Like I said, the kid's going to take some bumps and bruises, but I don't think it's going to be long for him to get past that rookie wall and then start really showcasing that talent that a lot of people was drooling over when he first came into the league or why they got drafted.
Right.
But defensively, I think that's one position in the draft that they gotta really focus on and get better because. You don't want to put a young rookie like that in a hole where he has to go out there continue to perform each and every drive.
Right.
That's one thing that you want to put him in good situations where he can be able to shine and be able to mature. But we've seen in the NFL, man, these quarterbacks get in bad positions with teams where defenses are not holding up to the end of the bargain, and now you're forcing the quarterback to reach and to overexert himself and start making bad decisions with the football. And now, you can get in the quarterback psyche and mess up his progression because he's doing too much.
Absolutely. And we're getting a little bit long-winded here on IDP because, this is – no, it's fine. It's just normally this is what we cover on the Patreon show, and I know not all of our listeners have a love for defense like we do.
We'll give you a little taste of Patreon so now you can be able to subscribe.
Absolutely.
Just a little tease. That's a tease in the biz.
I will say to wrap up with the Rams, I love this move because they're most likely losing Tremaine Johnson, so Marcus Peters comes in, replaces him right off the bat. They get younger. They get a guy for basically pennies on the dollar because he's still in his rookie contract for one more year with a fifth-year option. So they can have this guy for almost nothing for the next 2 years. Obviously, the fifth-year option's expensive, but still, before you have to commit to the guy long-term. So I think this is a great move for a Rams team that is just developing. And like you said, Wade Phillips with Marcus Peters, that's an exciting combination. And, we'll talk about that more, I'm sure, on Patreon. But let's keep moving because let's get to why everyone's here. And that is our topic of the day, the lessons we learned in 2017, focusing on recapping the tight end position. The dumpster fire that was the tight end position, we should probably say. No part of this is really exciting, so I guess we'll just go down the line. Your number one tight end on the season was, shockingly, not really sarcasm there, Rob Gronkowski. He was taken number one. He finished number one. He's going number one, 158.4 fantasy points. He did this on the heels of actually missing a decent amount of time this season. He only played in 14 games, was hobbled in another couple of them, but hey, still got the job done. That's why Gronk goes early. Guys, what were your thoughts on Gronk this year? And assuming, of course, he does not retire going forward into next season. Jason, I'll start with you.
Gronk was Gronk. He is that number one guy the ball's going to go to, and in that offense, he was awesome, as he always is. And like you said, didn't matter that he missed games because he is just so productive when he's around. If he does come back, then I think we're just going to see more of the same. He's as long as you have Tom Brady and you've got Gronkowski on the same team, Gronk's going to continue to get the lion's share of the passes.
Yeah, man, he's such a just an unfair mismatch for defenders, man. And then, with him and then the savvy Tom Brady, he's always going to get those points. So he's that guy that, you see going in the first round. You see, a lot of people spend a lot of money on auction. and he's worth every penny, and he's worth the draft stock that he gets because, of course, you got to factor in right now with his injury track record that he's going to miss some games. But I think the yardage and then the touchdowns that you're going to get from him, it justifies you being able to take him that high because, once again, this tight end position, there's only 5 guys on this list, probably even, if that, being even more generous than that are going to guarantee give you those points. And Gronk is one of those guys that already know you're going to get a good score from him, good points. He's going to get the looks. So it's like, you don't, just like Jason said, Gronk is Gronk. It's not that much to say. You just know, Gronk does his thing.
Right. I mean, from the tight end position, as we talk about in the season, to have a non-bust performance, as we always recap, we lower the threshold pretty substantially when we're getting to the tight ends.
Right.
And Gronk, even though he missed games, still had 8 games where he got you a solid double-digit performance. I mean, he was really, really good when he was healthy. He never really lost you any weeks, a couple bad performances here and there, but as a whole, as long as he wasn't injured, he was, for the most part, winning you weeks at your positional battle at tight end. This is why he goes high. He is the number 1 target in this offense. He is obviously the main red zone threat as well, getting a lot of touchdowns. I mean, Gronk is Gronk. And, I mean, I know the rumors are kind of heating up that maybe we've seen the last of him, but until it happens, I don't believe that at all. I'm believing he's going to be back until a year otherwise. You always assume you're not going to have him for a full 16. He hasn't played a full 16 since his sophomore year in 2011. But other than that, I mean, when he's out there, he's going to be in your starting lineups. It's Rob Gronkowski. He's under contract for 2 more years, and I expect him to play. So we'll see, of course, as we move on and as he makes his decisions. But we shall move on to a guy hot on his heels, finished only about 8 points behind him, Travis Kelce, 150 fantasy points. Now, he was drafted number 2. He finished number 2. CJ, tell me about Travis Kelce.
Well, Travis Kelce, man, he's basically Gronk's little brother in fantasy football, man. He's that Gronk light that you want, you know what I'm saying? He's still getting up there on draft boards. He's getting a little high, and he's getting a little pricey in auction, but once again, he was worth it. He was worth it these past seasons working with Alex Smith. Now, my only concern is, it's the pros and cons. You got Patrick Mahomes, like I said, this year. We always say that rookie quarterbacks, their best buddy and is a tight end position or that slot receiver. So it's going to be interesting because I know defense is going to try to lock that down. But Travis Kelce is such a mismatch. I mean, you watch that game that he played against played against the Titans, when he was lighting them up until he got taken out in that game. And possibly if he didn't, they probably we talk about the playoffs a whole different light just because how dominant and effective he is in this offense. So at the end of the day, I like Travis Kelce because he is that guy. When you look at the receptions and the yardage, he's always top in that offense. So he's going to get those looks. You can count on him for yardage, receptions, and of course you want to see the red zone getting even more. But his touchdowns were great this year, and they went up from the previous year. So it's all pluses to me for Travis Kelce. The only minus, once again, is the rookie quarterback. Can he get that same production out of Patrick Mahomes like he was getting to Alex Smith? And to be honest, right now, at an early look at it, I don't think so. But I can be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, sophomore quarterback next year, first-year starter. It's concerning, to be sure, because Travis Kelce had great rapport with Alex Smith. Alex Smith's no longer there. But, I mean, he had a great year. And for fantasy, obviously, we always talk about touchdowns being that thing that's great. Yardage is consistent. He got over 1,000 yards yet again. Pretty similar amount of receptions, even though he played 1 less game. But 8 touchdowns, by far the most he's ever scored. And like you said, with another quarterback in there, you have to assume that there's going to be some hurdles. There's going to be some learning curves. And I honestly expect the Chiefs to struggle at times. I know the talent is pretty immense for Patrick Mahomes, and everyone's really, really excited about him. But, I mean, look, he's going to face some exotic defenses, things he hasn't seen before, and I expect the offense to struggle at times. So does Travis Kelce take a massive hit from this? I wouldn't say massive because I still think he's going to be one of the top options, one of the top reads in most plays, but I don't know. Do you guys think that he finishes around this 1,000 yards and let's say his career average of about 4 to 5 touchdowns again?
I think he'll drop under it a little bit. The thing that you guys are talking about with Patrick Mahomes, I completely agree. I mean, you switching quarterbacks, new face in a new place, it's something to worry about. Not necessarily new because, I mean, he was there last year, but starting, first time starting.
Right.
So there's going to be a bit of a drop-off. But this is the thing. A lot of people are probably thinking, Oh, yeah, you got a different kind of quarterback in Patrick Mahomes than you did from Alex Smith. Alex Smith loved his little intermediate routes and short 5 to 10-yard passes and things like that, and that's where tight ends thrive. We have to remember that Travis Kelce is not a normal tight end. This guy had the most amount of passes over 20 yards for a tight end over the last 3 years of any tight end in the league. He loves deep passes, and that's different for a tight end. It's one of the reasons that he is as good as he is. So I think that you won't see as much of a drop-off as a lot of people would expect just because of the type of tight end that he is and the fact that Patrick Mahomes can air it out and fit that ball into tight windows.
I mean, I guess time will tell. So let's see. He's going number 2 overall. Does that sound right to you guys, or would you take someone else ahead of him?
I think I'd take two, maybe 3 guys ahead of him now.
All right, and I guess we'll get to those guys as we move on. Let's move on to the number 3 guy, Zach Ertz, taken number 9. He was taken in the 8th round. He finished number 3 with 128 fantasy points. Now, there's a pretty big dip right there. Your top 2, Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce in the 150s. Now we're talking, a 20-point gap, which isn't huge in the grand scheme of things, but for a position that is already low scoring, that's a pretty substantial drop. But still, top 3 finish, CJ's own Zach Ertz. I'm going to throw it to you, CJ. Tell me about Zach Ertz.
Man, Zach Ertz had one hell of a year this year, man. Him and Carson Wentz, they connected. I mean, it was ridiculous, man. They were making some good music together this year. If Carson didn't get hurt, when he did, my prediction of Zach Ertz going double-digit touchdowns, he would have got it. I mean, he was only 2 off, man. It was going to be good, but still great year, man, and a lot to look forward to. I mean, freaking Zach Ertz was plagued and pigeonholed being that guy that was only showing up in November and December, but he was consistent. His play was consistent this year. He was creating the intermediate routes. He was great in the red zone. Carson was looking for him, and they connected a lot. So I'm really liking Zach Ertz going into this year. Even if Foles has to start a couple games, that we saw in the playoffs and of course in the Super Bowl that they started connected too. I mean, they Foles and Zach Ertz scored the game-winning touchdown that put the Eagles up. I mean, so this is some good stuff and a lot of good stuff that you could be able to like going into this year. I mean, he's been going late. And a lot of people hasn't been spending a lot of money on him, but I think this past year will open a lot of people's eyes, and then so it's going to be some business decisions for those that have been fans of Zach Ertz because the price tag is going to go up tremendously to me.
Oh, yeah, he's going in the 4th round right now, which is a pretty high price tag for a guy. But like you said, he put it all together. Finally, Mr. December got it done for a full season. Obviously missed a couple games. He hasn't played a full season since 2014. But, I mean, he is consistently within his norms, somewhere in the 70 receptions, somewhere in the 800 passing yards. But the cool thing, he's doubled his touchdowns each of the last 3 years. He went from 2 to 4 to 8 now this past year. If he can stay healthy and this offense continues to flow, I mean, I'm not saying I'm expecting much of a regression in this offense. They performed incredibly well, and we'll see how it continues on into next year with some changes in the coaching staff. But I think it's very obtainable for him to get somewhere around this 800 yards and 8 touchdowns threshold yet again. So, I mean, I really like Zach Ertz. So I would say 4th round for people who draft tight ends early. It's hard for me to weigh in here because I wait really late on tight ends and quarterbacks, as we know. But does that sound right for you guys?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this once again, he's start with more play like this, a couple more year play like this. He's up there with that elite tight end level where his play is going to force him to go this early for people.
Yeah, young guy. He's only 27. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think about taking tight ends this early either. Not this early, not in the 4th round. But I definitely would put him up in that top 3 or 4 tight end group. This is one of the guys I was talking about I would maybe take over Travis Kelce next year, just because I think that it's going to go in opposite directions. I think that I'm a big believer in Carson Wentz. I think that he's going to continue to improve, and this offense is going to continue to improve. Because you have to remember, this offense was an anomaly this year because you had a second-year quarterback who absolutely was lights out, and then he switched over to a veteran later on, and the offense didn't seem to miss a beat. They kept on clicking. So I think with a little bit more consistency, with Wentz in there for another year, another off season to get right, I think that Ertz is probably on the upswing. So yeah, I definitely would take him pretty high for a tight end.
All right, well, there we go. Let's move on to a favorite of this show, I know. Number 4, Jimmy Graham. He finished number 4, was drafted number 5, 114 fantasy points. It seems like it's the same story every year while he was in Seattle. Obviously a free agent now. They kind of forget that they have him. Then they say, oh, yeah, we have Jimmy Graham. They start throwing him the ball, and then he's really productive. So, Jason, I'll throw this to you. I know you're a big fan, so tell me about Jimmy Graham and his upside for next year, because it looks like people are really down on him not knowing his landing spot, because he's currently going as the 10th tight end off the board as a late 7th round pick.
You do have to worry about where he's going to land because, I mean, you look at Seattle, and he could have done much, much better than he did, and he's still number 4 overall. You know, and like you said, there were spurts during the year where they completely forgot they had a top-level tight end. If they had used him, you're talking to me, he probably would have been up in the 130, 140 range. But again, you know, so you got to worry about where he's going to go and who's going to be throwing him the ball. However, I still think that you want to bet on this guy because he's going to be consistent. He's going to get, he's going to force the issue, you know. And if he goes somewhere that likes their tight ends, like if the big thing I'm hearing is he may go back to New Orleans.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of that too.
New Orleans, absolutely. And if he goes back to New Orleans, I got news for you. It's going to be scary for everybody else in the league because when Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham were on the same page, they were absolutely the best tandem in the league, tight end to quarterback. So if he goes there, I absolutely think you definitely want to go for this guy. Watch where he's going. But overall, again, for me, I'm targeting him. He's one of the guys I'm looking at.
Oh, yeah, always. I mean, he was really good. It started off slow, like I said. The first, 4 weeks, they kind of forgot they had him. He had a couple games where he had some decent yardage, but he got his first touchdown in Week 5. They had a bye week in Week 6. I mean, he had 10 touchdowns on the season. He basically scored a touchdown almost every single week following that, as well as getting some decent yardage. Obviously, he let you down in his game in Week 15 with L.A., where he finished with -1 yard. But, I mean, besides that, he was really, really good. CJ, you're by far, I believe, the most pessimistic on Jimmy Graham. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I mean, I like what he did this past season, but like you said, man, the consistency was not there, and it was a shame because in the Seattle's offense, it was just so up and down as far as who was getting the ball and who was throwing it. But I mean, not throwing it. I mean, but who was receiving the ball?
Who was running the ball? Yeah, the whole offense struggled. Yeah.
All offense was going through Russell, and I'm not hating on that. But when you draft Jimmy Graham as people that believe in him and people that like him and stuff like that, you're expecting some points. I mean, this guy is one of the tallest guys on your team. Oh, yeah. He's the most deadliest in the red zone. Oh yeah. Get the man the ball. Now, granted, they did get him the ball, but they didn't get him enough. They didn't get enough to me to grant him top 5 tight end in the league, and that's for me personally. But if they would have got him more of the ball, like the Eagles were doing with Zach Ertz, or even to the point where Delaney Walker in Tennessee, if he would have got the numbers like that, then I think we're having a different conversation about Jimmy Graham. And I don't think the Seattle would be letting him walk out the building, and him possibly reuniting with the Saints or even going to Houston. I know I heard that being a possible location.
I've heard that if Rob Gronkowski retires, he might become a Patriot.
Hey, that might be a thing too. That'd be disgusting too, man. But all in all, I expected more out of his trip with Seattle, his run in Seattle, especially with them being healthy this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, massive drop in production from when he was a Saint to a Seahawk, and this year, obviously, I mean, he was in all 16 games. He had a low of his time in Seattle in yardage, in average yards per catch, in average yards per game, or catches per game rather. But he got 10 touchdowns, which is the most he's ever had. Now, as I say all the time, and I've even said in this recording, touchdowns are hard to predict. I prefer a good floor of yardage, and he didn't get there, which does make it a little bit more volatile, makes it really concerning. And I would make this whole argument about potentially why maybe he's worth taking later, as he's going right now as the 10th tight end off the board. But since we don't know where he's going to land, it's really hard to speculate on that right now. So we'll simply say keep an eye on Jimmy Graham. If you're drafting early, don't be scared off to grab him, because I'm sure he'll go somewhere we'll have an opportunity to make a difference and put up points. But you can't obviously take him very high until you know what his situation is. So anything else you guys want to add before we move on?
No, I'm good.
Jason?
No, I'm good.
All right, we're good. Let's move on to number 5, a guy who broke the mold Evan Ingram. He was the 22nd drafted tight end. He finished number 5, 109.6 points. Now we're starting to get really low, even though we're in the top 5 still. So this is where the tight ends start falling off a little bit. I mean, he got it done. Simply, opportunity really reigned supreme here. Everyone went down in front of him. He got a massive opportunity, and he really, to a very large extent, seized that opportunity. CJ, you were by far the biggest supporter of him throughout the season, so why don't you take it away?
Well, man, I've loved this kid as soon as we started covering tight ends or these group of players this past draft. Man, I said that if he went to the Giants, I saw that he was going to fit in really good in that offense, especially when everybody was healthy. Now, granted, like you said, a lot of people went down this year, and that be able to showcase his talent and how effective he can be in this offense. Now going to this year, I really like the situation that he's in because you got Pat Shurmur's there. Pat Shurmur was once again the offensive coordinator coming out of the Vikings, man. Vikings, when you look at that tight ends, what they got going on there, they have my boy Kyle Rudolph there that my man Jason will be talking about shortly. But, you saw Kyle Rudolph's numbers when he had a true quarterback back there with Sam Bradford, man. Kyle Rudolph was getting those numbers. He was getting that. So I really like the situation now with Evan Ingram being the guy there and, having those distractions with Odell on one side, Shepard on the other, and you got Ingram that can be able to cover the middle of the field, and especially in the red zone, man. I think that it's going to be a big year for him, and I'm just, licking my chops, hoping I can be able to get my hands on this guy and not pay that much.
Jason, what are your thoughts?
I completely agree. I like Evan Ingram. He took on a major role for a rookie, especially a rookie tight end. As we know, rookie tight ends don't do a whole lot. But as you said, and you put it perfectly, he broke that mold and said, you know what, I'm going to be a top guy, and he was. Now I think that some of that volume is going to go away because you're going to have Odell Beckham Jr. coming back, and who knows what else will happen in the off season. But the bottom line is, he's still going to be a consistent guy, and when he played, he was relatively consistent, especially, as I said, for a rookie and for a tight end. So I like this guy as someone I would definitely target.
Yeah, I mean, you have to assume that he's going to regress a little bit this year. Like you said, opportunity was put right in front of him. Brandon Marshall went down. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. went down. They didn't really have any good pass-catching options that were a threat in the running game. It was basically Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard out there. But now all those guys are back. We don't know who they're going to bring in at running back, but we're sure that Pat Shurmur, who, obviously a very good offensive mind, is going to focus on getting some sort of really good three-down back, probably going to take away some production. He only had 6 touchdowns to begin with. You take away a couple of those, and he takes a pretty substantial drop in these tight end rankings. So I really do like Evan Ingram. I'm just worried about what his ceiling will be. I think he'll get a good enough workload. He'll be a decent floor play, but the ceiling concerns me, which is why, personally, as much as I like him, I kind of like where he's going right now. I dislike where he's going right now. He's the 4th tight end off the board. He's a 5th-round pick. I just think that's too high for a guy that we don't know what his workload will be in the upcoming year. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, like I said, I like him, but I can see your point as far as the workload. You don't know for certain what's set in stone, what that offense is going to look like, and once again, can he be that guy? Can he put up even better numbers than he did before? So I can see your point with that. But me personally, I look at the talent, I look at the situation, I look at the track record when it comes to coaching, and I like the situation. I like what's going on there, and I won't take him in the 5th round, but I will take him a little later and be happy where I draft him, and then
What round sounds right to you, CJ?
Me personally, I started looking at tight ends, around round 6 or 7.
All right, well,
for me.
Well, he'll be gone by then, according to these current projections.
Well, yeah, those are dummies that are drafted like that for. So I would have more sense to be able to pick a tight end in a better round. So that me personally, I'll look at that. And as far as if I'm doing like a $200 budget auction, I'll probably go as high as $15 to $20.
Sounds about right. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree for right now. I do like him, but again, tight ends, I'm gonna wait a little bit before I start, ponying up the dough.
Yeah, so we all agree that early, 2nd pick in the 5th round is too early for this guy right now, especially with all the question marks.
A little too a little too early for me.
Yep. I will say that, I mean, hey, they look kind of like geniuses drafting Evan Ingram here. I mean, we all thought that David Njoku was going to be the second tight end off the board, but they grabbed Evan Ingram, and it ended up working out. Though David Njoku hasn't, been terrible. He's just a Brown, so it is what it is. Sorry, Browns fans. Let's move on to the next guy, number 6 tight end on the season, Kyle Rudolph. He was drafted number 10. He finished number 6. Pretty decent return on value for 101.2 fantasy points. Jason, you're a big fan of Kyle Rudolph. I'm going to throw this to you first.
I like Kyle Rudolph, and he had a decent year given the fact that he was dealing with a little bit of a quarterback carousel.
Yeah.
However, the time when Kyle Rudolph was great was when Sam Bradford was the quarterback. I mean, he absolutely loves to go to his tight end. Well, that is more than likely not going to be the case moving forward with the Vikings. Now, it could. I mean, they could surprise everybody and just go with Sam Bradford. So it could end up being the case, but I highly doubt it. So given that, I'm cooling off a bit on Kyle Rudolph, depending on who ends up being the quarterback and how that rapport comes.
Yeah, that's gonna be the big thing that people's probably gonna look at when it comes to him, because overall the talent is great. And if it's Sam Bradford, no question. I mean, this guy you're gonna talk about, being that guy that you probably I don't know what round quite yet or where he's going, but I mean, if it's five or 6, if it's 5, I definitely wouldn't scoff at it, just because I know the workload and the opportunities that he's gonna get with Sam Bradford being his quarterback is going to warrant, him being drafted high, because he was getting targets, he was getting yardage, and he was definitely getting that red zone work with that. If it switched up, and if it, we did read the report saying earlier about Case Keenum, they're not franchising him. I think that's smart by their part. But even if it's Teddy Bridgewater throwing in the ball, I mean, you got to go back and look at the workload he was getting with Teddy Bridgewater right there. It would not warrant him being drafted 5 or 6. Under Teddy Bridgewater, this guy's probably going in the freaking double digits, just because the workload he was going to get with him. So yeah, you got to look at that situation. But overall talent, I definitely like the kid, but it's going to be all about who the quarterback's going to be.
Absolutely. Quarterback is going to be the big thing here, which is why, I mean, he's going number 9 right now as a mid to late 7th round pick, which I kind of understand. And I think that's about as early as I would go on him, even though we have been saying for years. I mean, honestly, I've been saying since his rookie year in 2011, this is a phenomenal talent. We love Kyle Rudolph, but never really got the volume and the opportunity. With Teddy Bridgewater for a couple years there, he actually was very, very sparingly used. He was a little banged up at some of those years, but, I mean, he struggled to get to the 50 reception mark. He usually had somewhere between 2 to 6 touchdowns during that time, but, I mean, like we said, 2016 with Sam Bradford there, he lit it up. Last year, he was the number 3 tight end on the season. 83 receptions, 840 yards, 7 touchdowns, 11 plays of over 20 yards. I mean, he was used as a deep threat creatively, all these different ways. This year, less receptions, less targets, less yards, 1 more touchdown, which I guess is good, but as I always say, touchdowns are hard to predict. Tight ends get a lot of touchdowns, but you can't predict them consistently. So it's really kind of concerning, because we don't know who the quarterback's going to be, because depending on who the quarterback is going to dictate how he gets targeted. And of course, new offensive coordinator, new system, we don't really know what to expect for Kyle Rudolph. So it's concerning. I know a lot of people have been asking, what are the chances he gets cut? I've gotten a couple questions about this, because there is an out in his contract. He's owed $7.6 million, but they can cut him for only $1.3. I don't see it happening. I think he's a very important piece of this offense, and one they're going to want to keep, because whatever quarterback they bring in, they've got a really, really sick core here. I mean, obviously, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs at wide receiver. They're going to have Kyle Rudolph here at tight end, and they're going to have Dalvin Cook back at running back. This team is really tooled to be another productive offense next year. It all comes down to quarterback, which really will probably dictate the upside of him for our draft. So, again, 9th tight end off the board. I see that as probably the high end for right now, here recording on the 27th of February, not knowing what the circumstance will be. Let's move on, though, to the number 7 tight end, a guy who he's getting pretty old, but he's still keeping a pretty consistent Delanie Walker. He was drafted number 8. He finished number 7. That's good return on value. He's currently going number 6 as the 10th pick in the 5th round. I would argue that's a little early, but, I mean, hey, you could see it. CJ, tell me about Delanie Walker.
Well, Delanie Walker, once again, to me, right now, he's like Antonio Gates type of player right now. The way he'll be used in that offense, the way Mariota looks for him, he's gonna get those receptions. He's gonna get the yardage, and he's definitely that guy in the red zone. I mean, he showcased his talents throughout the year, and definitely went into the Pro Bowl and showed how good he was in the red zone and getting those touchdowns. So he's a guy I definitely like when it comes to that. Even though it's very variable about those touchdowns, he's been very consistent with Mariota, and while Mariota previously has been inconsistent throwing the ball to his receivers and more consistent getting the ball to Delaney Walker as a tight end. Now you got to look at it. You got to hope and probably see that he's going to take a step forward in his production and spreading the ball out to the rest of the offense. So I mean, he's so familiar and he's so used to throwing him the ball and finding ways to get him the ball that I probably wouldn't be that too concerned about it, just because how productive he is. But just like you said, he is getting a little older. But the man can still run routes even with him being older, and that's just something very intangibles about that. That's very good in the NFL.
Jason, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, he's been such a cog in this offense for such a long time, but they've started adding a lot more pass catching weapons around him, and that's why I think you're seeing a little bit of a drop off on him. I still like him. I still think he's a solid piece. He's a veteran presence. He's somebody that Mariota still feels comfortable throwing to. So definitely someone you still want to look at, as a possible tight end one.
Yeah, I mean, I find it kind of concerning, Delaney Walker. And look, he's been good for a very long time, at times arguably great. But, I mean, this team, kind of like you're saying, they're surrounding weapons around Marcus Mariota. I mean, Rashard Matthews, obviously, Corey Davis, first-round pick last year, who never really got going, but, I mean, we expect him to probably take a next step. Eric Decker will be gone, so that's something to take into account. We all expect that DeMarco Murray will be gone, but they have Derrick Henry there. So, I mean, they've got weapons around him. Delaney Walker, 33 years old. He's going to actually be 34 at the start of the season. And, I mean, productive, but the big thing here, I mean, yardage, 807 yards. He had 800 the year before, so very consistent in that aspect, but only 3 touchdowns. And for fantasy, it gets pretty frustrating at that point. He didn't even score his first touchdown until week 12. So that's pretty rough. I mean, he only had, one game where he got you close to double-digit points before that. So, I mean, a guy that you're taking as early as this, I mean, again, he's going in the 5th round. I don't know how much I want a tight end who struggles to make a double-digit point total. Now, again, the tight end position as a whole struggles, but I don't know. What do you guys think on this draft value? 5th-round pick for Delaney Walker. I think that's too high.
I mean,
5th round, it's too high.
Yeah, it's a little high, but I mean, I as a casual fan, I'm probably looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the track record when you go back and look at it. I could see somebody drafting them that high. Me personally, I'm not going to do it. I'll wait a couple more rounds to do it. But I can see a casual fan just coming in. They're looking at the tight end position like, who's this Delaney Walker guy? Oh man, look at these numbers with him and Marcus Mariota. They can do it again, and I can see somebody talking themselves into drafting them that high.
I mean, looking at the numbers based on what we consider a dud here on the show, he had over 8 weeks where he was not even startable based on his point total. So, I mean, where he struggled to get to even 6 points for fantasy. So, I mean, that's a tough start for fantasy. And to invest a 5th-round pick in a 34-year-old tight end, with a lot of other pass catchers, some of which that are up and coming, I just can't. I know I'm not going to do it. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you got to start looking at players like this, man. Right. You got to realize most of the time you got these guys that don't put a lot of time in their board.
Absolutely.
They're just going off of names. And Delaney Walker, even at his age, and even at he might not have great weeks, like you said, the eight weeks like that. He's still a fantasy name that it's marketable, and people still look at it and go like, okay, yeah, I can count on this guy.
He's not one of those superstar fantasy tight ends, but he's definitely one of those recognizable names. I agree. Right. So I mean that's why, like you said, he finished number 7. He's going number 6 right now, and maybe that'll be the case continuing into draft season. Time will tell, but I know I will not be investing that value in Delaney Walker. I like Delaney Walker. I mean, if I can get him really late, I wouldn't mind him later in drafts, but there's no way that I'm take him in the 5th. And honestly, I'd like him a lot better as my second tight end in a 2 tight end league, knowing how he's been trending the last couple of years. He's been trending down. So the last 3 years, actually, he's been trending down. So, yeah. Jason, anything you want to add?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
All right, well, let's go to a darling of both of yours, and that is Cameron Brate. He finished number 8.
Cameron!
95 fantasy points. So we're starting to get pretty sparse on points at this point, guys. And we're only at the number 8, top 8 tight ends. Oh, man. This is why a lot of people are calling for tight ends to be out of fantasy. But I'm getting really tired of that argument. Everyone's like, oh, let's take away the kickers. Oh, let's take away defenses. Oh, let's take away tight ends. I'm like, well, what are we left with at that point? It's boring. And that's part of the strategy is having to figure out these matchups and when to play these guys. Cameron Brate, he finished number 8, 95 fantasy points. He was taken 18th off the board, finished number 8, pretty decent return on value. He's currently going number 14, and I would say, honestly, that's not much of a surprise considering he's a restricted free agent, but he is currently a free agent. Obviously, O.J. Howard is there. Jason, tell me about Cameron Brate.
Well, Cameron Brate was a casualty of a stalled-out offense this year. I don't think Jameis Winston was ready. I don't know what happened, but yeah, he did not have a good year. And in fact, everybody was. In fact, this show was very high on Winston going in to the season, saying he was going to have a breakout season, and was finally going to kind of become the guy everybody kind of expected him to be. He had 2 extremely talented tight ends to throw to, one of them being a rookie, and it just never really materialized. And Cameron Brate is an excellent tight end. He's done very, very well in the past several years, and he is the number 8 tight end for whatever that's worth this year. But the bottom line is it was because of this offense stalling out, I think, that he didn't get quite as much production as he should have, also competing with the young rookie in O.J. Howard. I think that we're going to continue to see that moving forward if he stays in this offense, because Howard is going to start demanding the lion's share of the work. He's a more talented tight end. He's a more athletic tight end. So Brate, it would behoove him to move to a different team. Other than that, he's going to end up continuing to slide down this list, I think.
Yeah, CJ?
It's sad, man, because I really like this guy. He was really good a couple of years ago, picking up off a waiver wire, and he was money for you.
Yeah.
But it was just like Greg Jason said, it was just a rough anomaly of a year for this offense and for the organization. So, everything was effective and everything was just garbage, so it was tough. It was tough to watch a guy that you like and anybody that you liked in this offense, because they didn't do anything going on. So, and then going forward, of course I expect everything to get better. I expect them to find themselves, but I think Cameron's going to be that odd man out in this offense. Of course, this offense got to make some business decisions. You're gonna be paying him more. You got a rookie behind him that's cheaper, probably more talented, younger. So he's gonna be that guy out of there. And if he goes to a better situation, like I'm just painting a picture here. Like if Kirk goes to Denver, and then, Denver's dealing with, Virgil Green, that he's probably going to be gone. If Cameron goes to Denver, now that's a good marriage. That's a good marriage. Now, and I can talk myself into drafting him and, igniting the flame of hope that he can be a fantasy tight end again and get some good numbers with Kirk Cousins throwing the ball, because Kirk Cousins loved Jordan Reed, but Jordan Reed just, couldn't stay healthy. So, he gets a better tight end there.
Bold prediction there, CJ.
Yeah, man. I'm Peyton, man. I'm Peyton.
But I will say, if that did happen, yeah, I'd be excited. But he's a restricted free agent. Odds are he's probably not going anywhere, because restricted free agents rarely do leave. So odds are he'll probably re-sign for a relatively, team-friendly deal for this year at least. Be kind of forced into this role where he's going to cannibalize O.J. Howard and vice versa, and both of them will be mediocre plays. It's going to be really hard to predict unless one of them goes down. I mean, that's just the situation that they're in Tampa Bay. They have an abundance of riches, and like Jason said, Jameis Winston just never seemed to really grasp the opportunity that was put in front of him. The entire team is returning currently under contract offensively, except for their left guard. So, I mean, maybe a year of continuity will get this team going, build the rapport, and maybe a lot of these guys will thrive. But at tight end, it's hard to get behind that when there's 2 tight ends and only so many yards and touchdowns and passing attempts per game to go around for fantasy. So I'll say this. Cameron Brate, he's going as the 14th tight end off the board as a mid-13th round pick. Is that worth the flyer for you guys at this point, or would you rather go with a more sure thing that has more of an upside?
More sure thing for me.
Jason?
More sure thing.
More sure thing.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
So we're all in agreement there. We'll let someone else bite that bullet. All right, we're running low on time, so these last 4 guys, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. Number 9, Jack Doyle, drafted number 12, finished number 9, 89 fantasy points. God, this is where it starts getting really low on points. Let's see. I think we can all agree that Jack Doyle, I mean, a very good fantasy option over his career, especially in 2016. He was pretty decent, took a big step forward as far as yardage and receptions, but I mean, without Andrew Luck there, the teams and the production of the skill players on the team was really capped. So, I mean, he's currently going as the 11th tight end off the board. He's still going as a tight end 1. He's going as a super late 8th round pick. Does that sound right to you guys, presuming that Andrew Luck is back?
8th round. To be honest, I like him in the double digits. I like him in the 10th round.
I actually agree. 10th round.
Yeah. So especially if Andrew Luck goes back, I think he's a guy that probably will fly under the radar. And I know this is a computer simulation, but if real players, I think he'll fly out on the radar. Andrew Luck comes back, you can be able to grab him late, and he's a starting tight end for you, and he probably put some good numbers for you.
Yeah, I will say it's really, really hard to speculate with Jack Doyle because we haven't seen a healthy Andrew Luck and Jack Doyle on the field at the same time. 2016, Andrew Luck was banged up the entire season. As we found out after the year was over, he was never really right since, I think they said week 2, he re-aggravated that shoulder, played through it, obviously missed 2017, but there's a long track record that Andrew Luck targets his tight ends heavily, especially in the red zone. So, I mean, a lot of upside in Jack Doyle, but until we know Andrew Luck's status, I really can't get too behind him here. He's basically a 9th round pick. I mean, it's tough for me to really weigh in here because of my draft strategy, waiting super late on tight ends, but on their normal value, I don't know if I'd get in on him in the 8th, 9th round, but as the 11th tight end off the board, whatever that value turns out to be in your draft, I could get behind that value. So depending on where he goes, it'll be interesting, but it's really hard to project going forward what his ceiling will be. But his floor has been consistently somewhere in the 600-yard range and somewhere around 4 or 5 touchdowns the last 2 years. So you have to assume that he will at least progress on those numbers. And if he does, hey, you're looking at a guy who could feasibly finish as a top 10 tight end, as he did last year, especially with the way the tight end position is going. Let's move on to number 10, Jason Witten, another oldie but goodie. Drafted number 15, he finished number 10. He refuses to go away. Only 84 fantasy points. He's currently going as the 19th tight end off the board. Do you think that everyone's just kind of accepting the fact that Jason Witten, he has to slow down at some point?
I think people are just, that's a sympathy thing. I mean, because the guy is still good in that offense. Well, I'll rephrase that. He's good for stretches. So, he's good for a couple games. But I do expect for Dak Prescott to expand his repertoire a little bit when it comes to throwing the ball. Hopefully, Zeke doesn't have any foolishness happen with him, so he can be able to play all the games. And if that happens, you'll see the offense go back to what they did a couple years ago, and there was still times. There was good games where the defenses are too busy focusing on stopping Zeke and shutting Dez down the freaking 10 to 15 routes that Witten was open. Witten was open, and he was getting yardage, and he was getting touchdowns. So. It's mind-boggling to me because he's slow as crap. I don't know how he's getting open, but he gets open, he gets yardage, and somehow he gets to this point in reviews where we're still talking about this guy.
Yeah, Jason Witten to me is like the ultimate wild card at this point because he's going to be 36 at the start of the year, so he's ancient for an NFL tight end. I mean, he's under contract, though, for the next 4 years, but none of the money is guaranteed. Like, he has a $6.5 million cap hit this year, but they can cut him for nothing, and that's the case for each of the next 4 years. So will he even be there? I guess it's really going to depend on, him and what the team feels is best because he's a lifer. He's a long-term Cowboy. But remember how at the start of the season, he started the first 2 games as the was he a top 3 tight end, and then he fell off drastically. 3 yards, 9 yards as the next 2 games, rounding out the first quarter of the season. So he never really got going again. He had a decent week 7, and then other than that, it was basically nothing. So people invested in him, people traded for him. Everyone thought, oh, Jason Witten's back, and then he just ruined everyone's teams. So some people are probably burned by this, and I mean, as older guys tend to do. The cardio kind of falls off as the season went. That was the trend. He started strong and just kind of tailed off, and we didn't really hear much from him again throughout the rest of the season. A couple touchdowns here or there, but let's see. His last 2 games where he scored a touchdown, he had 8 yards, 1 reception for 8 yards and a touchdown, 1 reception for 20 yards and a touchdown. That was it. So, and that was his total on those games. So, yeah, I understand him going as the 19th tight end off the board. Basically, a depth move or a second tight end on your leagues as a 14th round pick, and I think that sounds about right for Jason Witten because even with all the pieces coming back, the only starter on this team that's a free agent is their left guard. I'm really not buying into Jason Witten. He's a fantasy darling. He's been a superstar for fantasy for a very long time, but Father Time's undefeated, and it looks like he's getting to Jason Witten right about now. So we all agree that this draft value sounds about right.
Yes, that's about right. It's like the Grim Reaper. When you said that, the Father Time.
He's not dying, but his career is. He's on the tail end of his career. He's 36, so I mean, just come on. Let's not put that evil on him. Come on.
Well, I mean, that's the way you served it up. It was like
I never said Grim Reaper. Let's move on to the next guy. Your number 11 tight end, Tyler Kroft, not Eifert, Kroft.
Why is this a thing? Why?
Because Tyler Eifert got hurt really early in the year, and then so he started getting opportunities as early as like week 3. And the fact that he was able to get here, he didn't start the season as the starter. He was not very good. He had 82.4 fantasy points on the season. He got most of that with touchdowns. He barely got 400 yards, but he got 7 touchdowns, and that's what really got him on this list. It's hard to project him going forward because we don't know what his status is going to be next year. Tyler Eifert is a free agent, so I mean, if Tyler Kroft is the starting tight end in Cincinnati, he's got to have some value there. I mean, he showed he's like Tyler Eifert, a viable red zone weapon, and we assume this offense is going to get some sort of repairs with an upgraded offensive line next season. So currently, he's going undrafted. Is this a guy that you would take a flyer on in like the 15th round as maybe a sleeper tight end for your team, or would you just kind of wait and see and maybe not even bother?
He's a waiver wire guy for me. I wouldn't draft him. I mean, in those late picks, I normally like to try to take a shot at rookies. Like maybe like a running back that I really like, or a wide receiver. I think that can be able to be something on an offense. But tight end with him, it's just he was great for you during the season.
At times,
because at times, but I don't know if you can. Truly, I don't know. For me, I can really get behind you actually investing in him really early.
He only had 1 game all season where he was a viable starter where he did not score a touchdown. Yeah. So that's how not great for fantasy he was. As far as a streamable option, he was hard to predict. If he didn't score touchdowns, he was basically useless for your fantasy team. So, yeah. I mean, like you said, the Bengals, they have to improve that offensive line, which is going to give Andy Dalton time, which will help the offense develop. And if Tyler Kroft is the starter, you have to assume he has a value. But I kind of agree with you guys. I mean, there are much more viable options, guys that we think are going to have a much larger workload, and probably at that point, like you said, CJ, other streamers or deep waiver wire guys, or just late round sleepers that we want to take a shot on over someone like Tyler Kroft. I wouldn't fault people for picking him up because the upside is there, but I think this is a very low floor, high ceiling play to say the least. Because touchdowns, as I always say, they're hard to predict. All right, and let's wrap this up and take it home. Number 12. Favorite of the show, Hunter Henry. 81.9 fantasy points. He is much the way of Cameron Brate. There's another tight end in town, and that's kind of been capping his production. He was drafted number 11, finished number 12, so basically return on value. Currently going number 7, and we all believe because the other tight end in town, Antonio Gates, should be calling it a career, though that's not what we've been hearing rumor-wise lately, but we'll see. CJ, tell me about Hunter Henry.
Man, Hunter Henry, man, he showed out this year, man. He did his thing. And once Antonio Gates got his, that all-time touchdown thing for the tight ends, we kind of pushed him to the side where he belongs. I respect everything that you've done, but it's time to let the young horse run. And that's what Hunter Henry's doing, man. When there was a point in the season where Phillip Rivers, they stopped trying to force the ball down to Melvin Gordon, and they started passing the ball, starting to get this offense thing more balanced. And Hunter Henry was starting to, reap the benefits off of that. And he started, really producing and being that tight end that you wanted. So me personally, I love this dude. I love what he can be able to be in this offense. He's a great blocker. He runs routes excellent. And, he built the rapport with Phillip Rivers these past 2 seasons where I really see him, showing out this next coming season. So I like him. And I'm going to be drafting him. That's just me.
Do you like him as the number 7 tight end off the board?
7 off the board. What's that? The third, fourth round?
Well, he's currently going in the 6th round, middle 6th. So it's still a relatively early pick for a tight end. To me, at least.
I would take him late 6. How about that? I'll take late 6. So 6th round for me. I'll take him.
Sounds about right. What about you, Jason?
Yeah. I think we've seen his floor. I think this year was his floor. At 81.9, and the 12th tight end overall. I think if Antonio Gates goes away and he becomes the guy, I think his ceiling is high. I think he's going to be a top 5 tight end. So yeah, I definitely would take him probably before the number 7 tight end off the board.
I'll just chime in. I agree with everything you guys are saying, but I'll be a little bit of a negative Nancy here a little bit, and I'll preach a little bit of caution because, as much as I agree with you guys, I really like Hunter Henry. I love the upside, but in a lot of ways, even if Antonio Gates does hang it up and call it a career or not come back next year, I still am concerned about the volume and opportunity here just because they still, going to next year, this team is loaded. They still have Keenan Allen, Tyrell Williams, Mike Williams, who should take a big step, and he was drafted as a red zone pass-catching touchdown threat weapon. Travis Benjamin's still there. They've still got Melvin Gordon, who is a pass-catching running back. So there's still a lot of other pass catchers that can get involved in the red zone. So I will say that to me kind of caps the upside, but I do really like Hunter Henry to take a big step forward this year. 7th tight end off the board. I'll have to look at my rankings and projections, but I don't hate that evaluation. And again, the way I draft tight ends, I can't probably see myself drafting him in the 6th round. But again, 7th tight end off the board, I can see a world where that's possible. I'll just say the floor is somewhat concerning here. So yeah, anything you guys want to add?
Let me show you the world. I'm sorry, that's
wow.
Came off
Jason, how about you?
That's confusing.
Yeah.
That was a little confusing.
Didn't like
that.
The
world thing, and it made me think about Aladdin.
So. Yeah. That's logical.
Like I said, the main thing with me with Hunter Henry is, like I said, he hasn't been given the opportunity to be the guy yet. And Mike Williams Mike Williams is going to be a thing this coming year, but I still like Hunter Henry, especially in the red zone, and especially look at them. You got to look at the matchups too. I mean, he's going to be matching up against slot guys and safeties and guys like that, whereas Mike Williams is going to be pulling corners over to him. So that's why I think I still like the idea of Hunter Henry being kind of a top guy there.
Yeah, I mean, 6'5", 250. He's a big guy. He's going to be a mismatch to cover. I agree with all that. I'm just worried about the volume of opportunity is all I'm saying. But yeah, I still really like the guy.
I agree.
Yeah. To recap, your top 12 finishes at tight end: Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, Jimmy Graham, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, Delaney Walker, Cameron Brate, Jack Doyle, Jason Witten, Tyler Kroft, and Hunter Henry. And that is going to do it for us today. Please make sure you guys tune in on Friday when we will be doing a way too early mock draft. We haven't done one in about a month and a half. We're going to see how things have shifted and progressed in the offseason, especially as we now have some of these players who have been tagged, some players that we know for a fact are going to be free agents, and just based on what we now know and have recapped from last year, kind of how we make our decisions going forward, should be pretty interesting. Make sure you guys subscribe again wherever you're listening. Rate, review the show. Helps the show out a ton. Please, we can't ask you enough. Please rate and review the show. 5-star ratings help the show out a ton. And if you want to interact with us or submit your questions, you can do it very easily on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. That's 3 Fs, at the FF Fanatics. Or individually, I'm at G Palmer FFF, CJ is at CJ Hickman 89, and Jason is at Jason Cabrera 13. So with that, we are out of here. Any parting thoughts, guys?
Guys, happy to be back. Sorry I was gone for so long, but I am back.
He's back. He's back.
Okay.
I'm back.
Better than
and
ever.
we're out of here. Everyone take care. Have a great week. We'll see you on Friday. Bye.
Peace.